Hello, welcome to 15 Minutes of Consulting Best Practices. My name is Maria Isabel Rios, and I'm here with David A. Fields. Hello, David.
Good afternoon, Maria Isabel. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. We're here to answer your questions about your consulting firm, right? Your boutique consulting firm, your solo practice, how to grow it, how to create success for you, for your clients. And this is a very interactive session. It takes us a minute to see your comments, to see your questions. Don't be shy. Add to the conversation, right? And start typing early so that we can get to your questions early on in the day. So let's dive in. Jaren, why don't you share the first question that came in, which I think it's the last question you had, David, as you were signing off last week, right? It looks like it. So this question is for you from Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel says, I'm a business coach in the manufacturing space in the UK, specializing in business transformation. Building on an earlier question from last week, I also started trying to reach out to individual businesses last year, having had a previously successful career as a subcontracting freelancer. I had little success until I began cold calling senior leaders. Are there any other more effective ways you could offer to build a client network? All right, David, building a client network. What do you think?
There's a familiar refrain. So, because we addressed this a couple of weeks back, and so Daniel, I encourage you to go back a couple of weeks. But I'll tell you what I said then. Though I will say, I'm surprised you had success cold calling anyone,
Right.
since that's typically not how consulting business is won. Consulting is built on contacts. It's built on relationships, and that means if you've been freelancing, so you've been winning indirectly, and you don't have relationships yet, you're in for a bit of time. It's going to take a couple of years while you build your relationships in whatever industry you're focusing on, or whatever it is you want to focus on. So it just takes a little bit of time. What I would say is, if you want to create relationships in a new market, then lean on partners who already have those contacts. In other words, you want to borrow tribes that include your target market. And you borrow those tribes from data providers, from software vendors, from trade associations. Trade associations are particularly good because they have, for instance, conferences where you can get up and speak. And when you speak, you instantly create a whole lot of relationships. You can also do it with other consulting firms that, again, sell to your market, but maybe their services are a little bit different. And the way you borrow tribes is you create value for your collaborators' tribe. That's all. You say, look, I have something that will be of value to them and to help you look good, and that's how it works. Maybe it's a webinar or a podcast or research, or there's a lot of ways to do it. And again, we talked about this a couple of times. Maria Isabel, anything you want to add onto that?
Deeper the level of your expertise, the quicker, right, you will be able to find a spot, provider you're fishing where the fish are. So make sure you're in a market that's full of fish, right? That you can position yourself to fish where the fish are, and that you have the expertise to match that. And hello, Aaron. Thank you for joining us today.
Captain Littles.
Right.
All right. And if you haven't said hello yet, say hello here in the session, and ask a question. Last week we had a lot of questions come in. Ask a question. See if you can stump Maria Isabel. That is going to be our goal for the day.
Challenge of the day.
All right. While we are waiting, Jaren, let's pull up another one from the bag, and I'll read it and make Maria Isabel answer. Okay.
Right.
Let's see. Over the past year, we've invested quite a bit in knowledge development and have finalized new offerings that will create value for our clients. Okay, good. We have some phenomenal case studies from early clients. That's also good. We want to have some events to introduce the offerings to our network of clients and prospects. What would be a right side up way of doing this? That's what Chris is asking. Okay, what do you think, Maria Isabel?
All right, Chris, thank you for your question, and hello, everybody. Thank you for writing and for dropping a note. So I would like for you to start, or I think a good positioning is for you to not start talking about your offering, but to start talking about the problem you're solving and the needs that are out there in the market. That's a great segue to then say, here's a problem, here's a need, here's a pain point. This is how you solve it. right? You have to build a bridge that allows you to then start talking about your offering or then introduce your offering. But you start making it about them. You start a right side up way. What is the need? What is the problem? What is the pain point that will entice somebody to actually be interested, right? And then it's when you bring out your offering, you bring out what you have built as a solution to that problem, pain point, right? Urgent matter. And then to show that this is for real, you give some examples of how you put the offering in play. Ideally, you can share your client names and the client situations, but even if you cannot, you can have some benchmarks built in of how you've created success. The more a prospect or a decision maker can hear that you've solved the problem they have for somebody that looks exactly like them, the more inclined they're going to be to want to work with you, because that's how consulting, it's ultimately bought, right? People want to know you've solved their problem for somebody that looks exactly like them. They don't want to be the first in line. So connect your offering to a problem, to an urgent matter, to a need in the market. That's your introduction. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I go back to where you started, right? Which is to be right side up, focus on them, focus on the challenge. So, maybe you want to introduce it via webinars or that kind of thing. Make the webinar about the problem, not make it. Don't make it about you. Even though you've got a great solution, you're not really presenting about the solution. You're presenting about the prospect and their situation and how to help them. Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. We have a question in here, David. I'm going to ask it for you. And we cannot see your name the way our platform is showing it. So thank you for sharing a question. It says, looking for a refresher on how to build relationships for business development with new contacts who treat their connections with you as a transaction. For example, I don't have any projects for you right now. Our area doesn't engage contractors. I'm aiming to build relationships, but they may not be. Do you move on or do you keep trying? David, what do you think?
Yeah, I like that question. And Daniel, thanks for the feedback. I'm glad that was helpful. What we talked about. So
thank you, John, for
it's
pointing
Lisa.
us.
John says it's Lisa. Okay,
Lisa.
great. So I would say both. Meaning, so do you move on or you try building a relationship? Both. You try building the relationship. So you've done a 111 message or something unintrusive, and they're like, "Look, I've got no interest. I don't need consulting right now." You say that's fine. I'm also not interested in selling consulting right now. However, I am interested in collecting wisdom and learning from you. And if you're willing to share a little bit about your journey, I would love to spend 15 minutes with you.
Right.
And if they so you invite them to a relationship building conversation, because that is in fact what you're trying to do, build relationship. Some people just don't have an interest, and they won't see you that way no matter what, at least not for a while. So you move on. Now in 3 months or 6 months, when they come up again in your queue, you reach out again and just reach out, never selling, always relationship building. And eventually some of them will say, "Oh, okay, you know what? Fine. Let's do 15 minutes."
Right.
What do you think, Marisabel?
That's true also. And also, people are not always in the same place at the same company in the same position, or the context of a company or the context of a mandate changes over time. So it's up to you to gauge, right? Is this the person who is very transactional in their nature, and are you always going to be met with that response? In which case, your 111 every 3 months may be enough of a low lift for you to send, and that's it. That keeps the relationship alive, and that's enough, right? Or is this all contextual in the place of business that they're in the company that they're in the position that they're in right now? And so you're playing a longer term relationship building game. Both things are perfectly valid.
Absolutely. Colette, like gathering wisdom is framing. Yeah, we like that too. That works pretty well. And Suzanne, I agree. Be a friend first. 100%. Okay. You're right. Maybe they're not feeling well. It could be all sorts of things. Don't make it about you. All right. There's a Suzanne asked a question. This is the Stump Maria Isabel question.
All right.
It's her entry into the contest. She's looking for tips. She's aiming to gain larger size clients. Worked most recently with solopreneurs. How do I best position my successes with them to translate to bigger clients and budgets? Well,
Ooh.
Marie-Isabel.
All right. So nothing more challenging, right, than working in a solopreneur context, because usually challenge for budget, usually timelines are very challenging, and the stakes are very high, right? Either they succeed or they don't. Those are all things you can leverage when you're positioning your projects and your successes with them. And how does that translate into an environment where the problems may be larger in volume and more complicated, but certainly will have one or more elements in common with the problems you're facing with a solopreneur? Meaning either the timelines will be tight, or resources will be scarce, or the stakes will be really, really high. So leverage that in terms of your framing. How does this translate in terms of the journey? The other element we typically see, right, and having worked with quite a few solopreneurs ourselves in this context and in our previous life, both you and I, David, have quite a bit of experience with this, is that it requires that you roll up your sleeves in a different way. And oftentimes clients appreciate that you will know how to do that when it's required. And you would know how to activate a consulting team to be more hands-on if there are gaps or if that's required for a project. Those are all elements you can leverage in your framing as you frame the work you have done to work in companies where the teams may be larger, or even the scope of a project may be much larger, both in times and in terms of revenue. So think about it, Suzanne. If this resonates, let me know, or let me know if I'm missing something. David, what do you think? What would you tell Suzanne that's same or different?
I agree. And I think, so anytime you change markets, anytime you're trying to stretch upwards, there's everything you just said applies. And I do think there's a particular nuance between solopreneurs and business owners. The businesses operate differently, right? I mean, if you go back 12, 15 years, most of our business was actually with solo consultants. And now solo consultants are a fairly small portion of what we do. But we did put in the hard work of learning about operating boutiques, not just from our own experience, but from studying it and talking and research. And I mean, we did a lot of hard work to identify best practices. And if you're going to go upwards from solo owners to folks that own larger businesses, you actually do need to know how those larger businesses succeed. And so that you are bringing value. And if you put in that work, then you can transition. I said we completely transition. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely fair. Right. You need to know what the issues are, for sure. The issues, the needs, the depth of problems are. And Catherine, you just sent a question. I think that's going to be our first question for next week, because I'm looking at the clock and I don't know that we'll have time to
yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, well, we'll attack that question first next week, next Monday, Catherine. So all of you stay tuned and also bring more questions with you. But we've managed to spend the better part of 15 minutes together. So before you go, though, make sure you've got Monday Live on your calendar. Jaren's going to put that up right down there. Okay, so that you're back. A lot of you come every week. For if this happens to be your first time, or you're like catch as catch can, put it in your calendar. Makes it really easy. Also, I wanted to let you know that the wait list is open for our next Solo Practice Accelerator. We just wrapped up the one in March. Some of the people who are commenting were there. It completely rocked. The average rating across all the participants was over a 9.5 out of 10, which it's because it's a really great program. And we have great participants. And if you're interested in joining, I highly recommend you get on the wait list. There just aren't a whole lot of seats. Finally, connect to Marie-Isabel and me. Thank you, Jaren. So our profiles are here. If you're not connected to us, please connect to us. And that's it. Thank you for being here. Have a fabulous week. Remember what we said at the top. Consulting is about them. It's about relationships. It's about your clients, about prospects. So give them value and give them kindness, and we will see you next week.
Ciao, thanks.